Welcome to Larry's Library. This week I read Basketful of Heads, the hardcover. Yeah, I know this book came out in 2020, so a lot of you maybe have already read it. And everybody on YouTube has weighed in on this book already. But, I just read it the other day and it was so great. I had so much fun with this book that I was like, you know what, I'm going to review it anyway. I don't care. So this is on DC's Black Label. And this is a standard size hardcover, but it's a nice one. In fact, you'll see in the B-roll here, it has a very unique outer cover. It's not the regular glossy. It's almost like a film of some kind. It's strange. I like it though. And when you remove that dust jacket, it has a nice glossy cover with a different image that's also really good. And I'll show that in the B-roll. So yeah, it's a standard size hardcover, but it's a nice, robust little hardcover. It's 184 pages because it collects the whole miniseries that came out in, I think, 2020 or maybe a little before that. But anyway, it was 7 issues is what it was. So it lists for $24.99, but of course, don't pay that. Get it at a good retailer, good discounter like InStockTrades.com, or as of the time of this shooting, and I'm about a month ahead, it's still available. This might be an evergreen. It should be because it's that good. So, and it was $14.49 at InStock Trades as of the time of this shooting. And I actually paid a little less than that because briefly it was on in their red tag sale section for some reason. It doesn't appear to be on there now. So, but anyway, even at $14.49, it's well worth it. Gotta say. So this is written by fan favorite Joe Hill, and the art, like 98% of it, is by Leomacs. Now I had never seen this person's art before. It's an interesting name, one of those one-word names like Beyonce. But this is Leomacs. It does say that Ricardo Labella assisted with some pencil pages for issue 5. So I don't know which pages they were or how much of it had this extra artist on it. But I gotta say, I didn't notice an abrupt shift in style at all. So apparently this person mimicked his style well enough, or this person, I don't know the sex or the gender, but apparently they were close enough that there was definitely no abrupt change that I could detect. I wasn't really looking for it, but I didn't go, ugh, there was none of that. And yeah, the art is great, by the way. Really good art throughout. I just loved it. And this was a thrill ride is what it was. That's one way to put it. It was, to me, the tone was very reminiscent of like a Quentin Tarantino, like Pulp Fiction type deal, but with a supernatural element. I mean, you could argue that Pulp Fiction had a supernatural element with that case, but this is a much more overt supernatural element here. And it was awesome. I had a hell of a good time reading this one. I didn't want it to end. And when I was researching some of the stats, like the page count and the availability and all that for my notes here, I seen on IST there's a sequel that came out for this, which I knew nothing about. It's called Refrigerator Full of Heads. So I will have to get that now because I love this. Now it does have a lot more people listed in the credits, and I don't believe it's written by Joe Hill. So I can't vouch for how good that one will be, but I'm going to get it because this is so good. I definitely want to follow some of these events. Well, let me get to that. So the plot on this, I'm deliberately going to be very vague about this because if you by chance have not read Basketful of Heads and you're thinking about doing that, then I'm not going to do spoilers here. But I'll give you some vague ideas of the plot here. The story involves this young couple, and I'm assuming they're probably in their early 20s, look to be to me. And it's mainly about June Branch is the character, the girl. And she goes to visit her boyfriend, who's working a part-time summer job, or not part-time, but a temporary summer job on this island that's sort of a resort island and small community, and he is being a temporary sheriff's deputy. Okay. Yeah. So she goes to visit him on his last day to wrap up his summer job. She's going to help him pack his stuff and, come back to the mainland, whatever. She goes, and a lot of stuff happens. There's a really bad storm, so the whole thing takes place. All of the events of this story it's just raining harder and harder. So it's really creepy. It's great. And she unravels this plot where a lot of the people aren't what they appear to be. Some of the people she assumed were good guys are not good guys. You know, I mean, that's pretty vague. But so she ends up trapped in this house, and these thugs are there, and separated from her boyfriend. And the guy that owns the house, he is a collector of Norse relics, okay, Viking era weaponry and paraphernalia. And so the weapon she happens upon and that she's able to get her hand on during all the events where she's doing this cat and mouse with these thugs that are there, and she's all alone. There's no power in the house, so the lights are out. Yeah, it's a mess. So the weapon she manages to get a hold of is a Viking era axe. And, you know, well, you may not know if this is your first Larry's Library video, but I do have a love for weapons, especially medieval weapons. It's kind of like a side hobby of mine, is kind of studying some of that stuff. So I was really excited to see this. And, you know, I'm happy to say that the artist here, and the writer, I guess, actually did a little study, because the look of this axe is pretty close to what a historical Viking axe looks like. Now, the only thing you could argue, maybe you could quibble about, is perhaps the blade is a little overly large. But that's a common thing in fantasy and in fiction and in movies, is to show a battle axe with this incredibly large blade that people didn't actually have in the medieval times. Now, there were very large blades. The Dane axe is pretty large, and axes used for executions were overtly large. But actual battle axes that they carried tended to be smaller. Because one thing you got to realize about real historical weaponry is the common person, the common soldier in medieval times, they weren't walking around looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, that's not the case. They were just, a lot of them were average guys. You know, they with average builds, average guys with average builds. So they weren't like bodybuilders, and their weapons were proportioned for a normal person, not a superhero or a fantasy barbarian. So most of these axe blades were not that huge, but it's pretty damn close. It's not as big as like the typical axes you see in the Conan comics and like that are just crazy big, or Frazetta paintings, which are way bigger than real life historical weapons. So, and the design of the blade, it's a bearded axe. It's just awesome. It really is fairly authentic. You know, it brought a smile on my face as kind of a weapons geek. So I did enjoy that. And this blade, like I said, this axe that she ends up grabbing a hold of, just happenstance. You know, this is what she was able to get a hold of, and she starts using it to defend herself. And it has some unique properties. The blade is etched with the Viking tree of life. I believe it's pronounced Yggdrasil. And if you know any, I'm not going to say what the supernatural powers of this axe are, but I'm going to tell you it has some. And if you know what anything about the Norse lore, and you know what the Viking tree of life is, what it represents, then you know there's a clue. There's a clue to what it does. But it is pretty awesome. And she ends up going medieval on these guys and unraveling the mystery of the caper of who did what as far as the criminal activities on this island. And it's a lot of it is her just trying to survive this night and get to her boyfriend and find him. And is he alive? Is he dead? And is she going to make it? Is she going to get killed? And what's the deal with this axe? It's horrific, and it's over-the-top violence, and it's kind of grisly at times. So if you don't like blood and stuff like that, then you're probably not going to want to read this. But it's not as bad as many of the books out there. But yeah, it's pretty rough at times. But it was fun, and there's some real dark, subtle humor throughout it too. So there's some funny gag moments too, you know. And it really reminded me a little bit of, like I said, Quentin Tarantino style Pulp Fiction type stuff. It also reminded me a little bit of the Joe Pesci movie, 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag. And now that, but it's only because of the beheads thing. And, you know, well, if you haven't seen 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag, check that out if you like Joe Pesci. and you like that sort of humor, then yeah, Eight Heads in a Duffel Bag. It fits real well with this book. But this is more horror and definitely has that supernatural element, and it's awesome. It is a thrill ride in it, and I'm going to try not to give too much away in the art that I scan here, because I don't want to give away the plot completely. But yeah, I can't really say a whole lot about it without giving away the awesome plot. I really liked how it ended, and yeah, I had a really good time with this one. Check out the art. It's great. And I will be checking out, what was it called? Refrigerator Full of Heads. I will be ordering that one. I can say that. So I hope you like taking this quick look at it. And, sorry I couldn't give you much detail on it, but I don't want to ruin this plot. And if you like this, give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you next time.